Okay, The Witchfinders is the 8th episode of Series 11, written by Joy Wilkinson and directed by Sally Aprahamian, which makes it, depressingly, only the second Doctor Who story written and directed by women. I say depressingly, even though it's clearly a pretty cool thing, but dear lord, you know how many female writers the show has had, like, in total, since 1963? 8 or 10 if you're being really generous, and including Leslie Scott, who had a writer's credit on the arc but didn't actually write for it, and Paula Moore, who probably doesn't exist. Directors? About 10. Last time he had non-dudes in the writer's chair and the director's chair was Enlightenment, back in 1983, 35 years ago. Is this episode good because you've got a woman in the lead role reading a woman's lines directed by a woman? No, this episode is good because it's good. Though, let's get this one out of the way. The reveal of the Morax, like the moment when the mud creatures took over the main witch hunting lady, that was fine.
Morax!
No, it was fine. That's the one thing people are really pointing to in this episode as quote-unquote bad, and nah, it's just it's the moment that feels like it's badly paced and out of nowhere, but you know what else was sudden? The moment where Julian Glover rips off his mask at the end of City of Death Part 1, and y'all love that damn moment, don't ya? Why? 'Cause a man wrote it? A Douglas Adams man? I'm just kidding. You love it because City of Death is a stone cold classic, and the reveal led to a cliffhanger, and that helps it get away with a lot, like the fact that most of Part 1 is just the Doctor and Romana running around Paris. The Witch Hunters has no cliffhanger, and I don't know if it's a classic so much as just a really, really good episode where everything pretty much kind of fits together. But for heaven's sake, if a cheesy-looking monster suddenly revealing themselves with an over-the-top voice bothers you, you're watching the wrong show!
Morax!
Here's everything right with the Witchfinders in 5 minutes or so or less. Okay, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, etc., whatever. Tell me what you thought of the episode. Okay, it's not like I was chomping at the bit waiting for a story where the Doctor being a woman actually comes into play, but this is the kind of story that maybe, like, you could tell it with the other Doctors, but the fact that she's a woman makes it really interesting. From King James' default sexism and seeing the psychic paper, to the fact that them trying to dunk the Doctor as a witch, to the fact that the Doctor gets to, hang on, I heard this phrase somewhere. I need to, hold on a sec. I wrote this down. Okay, inhabit female spaces. I think I'm allowed to say that. Okay, which she got to do a little bit in Demons of the Punjab.
This is the best thing ever. Never did this when I was a man.
But it's kind of cool to see her do it here in kind of a pickety witch kind of, a Wicca sort of women power maiden mother crone kind of way. I'll stop doing that. King James's fun toolbox of creepy torture things.
Torture implements, charms, and a wide selection of body parts.
Alan Monkey Flippin' Cumming as King James.
Chosen ruler and Satan's greatest foe.
The Hat. King James's crush on Ryan, which was sort of played for laughs, but I also kind of like how Ryan just treated it like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, without being all homophobic about it. I like that the new Sonic functions as a tricorder, and if you don't, you're bloody wrong.
I lost me mum and me nan.
My father was murdered by my mother, who was then imprisoned and beheaded.
Okay, that's worse.
Creepy mud granny zombie. Creepy overhead horror movie forest shot.
We'll rule this world.
We?
Your body filled with my Morax King.
Oh my.
Creepy horror movie The Witch Angles. Annie Wilkes, I'll be a good doobie, I promise. I really like that the Doctor's tying the witch hunt back to Yaz's story of being bullied, because it's the same kind of unjust power dynamic on a larger scale.
Powerful witch.
No, sire. I am no witch. I'm just good at holding my breath and getting out of chains. Thanks to a very wet weekend with Houdini.
Oh my.
Okay, remember how I said Sally Aprahamian was probably a Cure fan back in the day? I'm getting kind of a goth in general vibe from her now, because going black and white here, except for the flesh of the tree, is so Sleepy Hollow. And hat! I love the hat! I want Jodie to keep the hat. And that is the exact same color palette as Nine Inch Nails' Perfect Drug video. And here we see the thing that everyone's been complaining about, me included, but drawn very, very clearly so that even an idiot like myself can see it. There's a difference between, hey Morax, let those corpses go and piss on off back to hell, and we will destroy you because we can. Thing is, it works here. The point was to drive the damn mud creatures back to Mudsylvania or whatever, not to be cruel. I don't know if it's a strategy that will work every single time, but this doctor has committed to being kind because, as we heard her say a few weeks back, she promised her former self that she would, quote-unquote, be kind. Yeah, I'd love to see her go all family of blood on the bad guys too, but I kind of get it. And what's Willa gonna do?
Be a healer. Be a doctor.
Duh!
We will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger.
Ezekiel.
Tarantino.
In conclusion,
Like every other episode this year, the monster isn't the monster is people, right? Well, this time around, there is a legit monster, and the monster is a threat. The monsters want to fill you with mud and use you as a meat puppet. Charming, right? Okay. People are also the monsters because, witch hunt. People blaming each other for things they didn't do, pointing towards one tiny sliver of out-of-context evidence and extrapolating a whole thing out of that. Mistress Savage is very good at doing this. And Mistress Savage also knows what's really happening, but this is a pretty common theme historically in witch hunts, where the oppressive group with the power usually starts it, but people marginalized by society, like, say, women in 17th century Britain, will eventually fuel the flames by turning on each other in order to make sure that no one goes after them personally, thus replicating the same systems of oppression under which they suffer by turning on others within their own group, usually perceived as weaker or less intelligent, as a way of sending a signal that they are virtuous.
Honestly, if I was still a bloke, I could get on with the job and not have to waste time defending myself.
So, might this episode be perhaps saying that, yes, there's definitely a monster and that monster does pose a huge threat, but let's not do the monster's work for them by, dragging each other through the, mud? Yeah, maybe that's a stretch. I really liked this episode.
You see flaws and